You are about to experience a show like no other. Sit back and relax and let us feed your mind on Close Encounters with the BMD. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Close Encounters with the BMD. And on our live remote phone, we have researcher, investigator on the topic of UFOs, renowned guest, Michel Deschamps. Good morning, sir. And how are you today?
I am super.
How is the weather up north?
Very, very slight snow coming down, and I'm assuming cold, but no wind from what I can see.
Now, what about any quick sightings to talk about in our last conversation? Anything happened last week?
Not that I know of. Nothing at all. Winter is a slow season.
Okay.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk in our pre-meeting chat there. You wanted to mention about the topic MUFON, M-U-F-O-N. That is a club membership established in 1969. We might as well get right at it. What is MUFON?
Well, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, and when I joined it in 1991, it was based in Seguin, Texas.
Okay.
After that, it moved to San Antonio, I believe. And I joined because I managed to get my hands on Stanton Friedman's phone number. It was the famed nuclear physicist who's passed away this summer. Okay. And he was a chairperson of that organization, or one of its members as well. And so he says, don't join just because I am a chairperson or a member of it, but that would be your best bet if you were to use your material for a particular purpose. So I joined the group, and this was 1991. I started collecting some of their, the journal. I was getting a monthly journal called the MUFON UFO Journal. I just enjoyed the case files and everything they had there. And it ran, my interest and my involvement with MUFON ran till 2011.
Okay.
Now, MUFON Ontario, down in Toronto, mostly based in Toronto, MUFON Ontario, kind of contacted me, and they basically had appointed me provincial section director for Sudbury, Ontario. And
so, what are your responsibilities with that title?
Well, they were to delegate some, I guess you could call it jobs, to people working under me to investigate sightings when reports would come in, do field research, actually go to the location and stuff like that. But the funny thing is, I was by myself. I did not have field investigators working under me. I had to take the exam myself. I have several copies now of the MUFON's field investigator training manual.
Okay.
And the cool thing with MUFON is that it involves 45 different fields of sciences. So you're talking anybody from aerospace engineers to soil analyses specialists to sample collecting, whether it's, back then the crop circles weren't, though they were around, but as I was around here, crop circles are not so prevalent as they are in England, but sighting reports, landing cases, but I had very little equipment. MUFON Ontario provided me with an old Geiger counter.
Okay.
I've since bought one that's even more sensitive and portable and held, actually, from the same company, which is run by the famed Bob Lazar, who walked away from Area 51 S4 back in 1989.
Yes.
So that was one piece of instrument that I wanted, absolutely. I'm also looking for an electromagnetic field detector.
Now, maybe you can take a minute there or so and explain how that equipment helps in the investigation of UFOs for some of the listeners that perhaps don't understand what they mean. Take a second and break down the equipment, please.
Okay, well, the radiation detector is very, very critical in a lot of cases, not every single case, mind you, but a lot of cases of landing site investigations. Residual energies or effects are left behind after a UFO has left the area, whether it actually touched down or hovered over the particular site. And so in a lot of cases, there were radiation traces that would spike. So, or you'd have weird effects on the plants and sometimes on the people. So you needed a device that actually would detect how much radiation was left at the site.
Okay.
Electromagnetic field detector is almost the same thing, except that because we have a lot of rocks up here, and I've heard a lot of weird cases taking place on the Radar Road where our old radar station used to be. I'm assuming that there's got to be some energies that are emanating from the rock. So that would be another piece of instrument that would be viable for investigating that. Now, electromagnetic field detectors are also, or EMF detectors are also used in ghost investigations as well.
Okay.
There's all kinds of instrumentation that you can get. Instrumentations that can detect cold spots, spikes in or temperature drops. Anything that might indicate that. Those particular in ghost cases, but with UFO landing sites, a radiation detector is a good thing to have. They also showed in the training manual how to lay out a grid pattern and how to actually sketch the landing site. Now, it's the same thing is done when you've got underwater archaeologists finding a new wreck or something. They will actually sketch it all out before starting to remove the artifacts for study. So it's along the lines of the same thing.
So it was a similar process on the investigation and finding the Titanic, I believe, was it not? Yeah. And all the other ancient Phoenician vessels, and where they found all the amphors filled with, or used to be filled with wine and all that stuff. And same thing with location with gold, like galleons that were filled with gold. So looking for UFOs is really being on a treasure hunt too, isn't it?
Well, these days it sure is, because things don't occur when you want them to.
Exactly.
And a lot of cases, despite the fact that everybody has a cell phone now, you're not always at the ready to take photographs of a UFO. And I tell you, people don't understand when you see a UFO for the first time, or even sometimes for the 10th time. You're so mesmerized by the sighting, you may have your camera only a few feet away from you or in your hand, and you won't even think about lifting it because you're wanting to absorb and take in as much as you can with your own eyes.
When we had our discussions the last two times, and of course they were very informative, I had the feeling that you were describing this excitement, or let's even use the word anxiety. Do you feel that somehow when you got close enough, it put you in a little bit of a trance?
Well, the trance is self-induced. It's not the UFO necessarily causing you to look at it, but it's so out of the ordinary, unlike a 3-second car accident, which people are very familiar with, and a lot of times you won't remember all the details, the license plate of the guy who hit the other one or whatever. But in a UFO sighting, it is so unusual that everything is etched in your mind. And somebody reporting me a sighting 2 days ago will be as detailed as somebody reporting a sighting they've had 56 years ago. It's that particular. Wow. It's that particular, and it's that intense. And that's when once you've spoken, hopefully face to face with the witness, you can sort of study the body language, and you look at their eyes, and if they get all glazed, they've seen something, because it's changed them. It's changed them so much, so profoundly, that they'll never look back. And I've second-guessed myself for the first 10 sightings I've had, and after that, I said, you know what, this stuff is happening. There's no use denying it, and I don't care what anybody else says. And so it was important for me to start when I was in high school collecting UFO reports, and I had this easy access book, which is about almost an inch thick now, or 2 inches thick. And that's when I turned to Stan Freeman and says, what do I do with this material? I didn't know what to do. So he's the one who basically redirected me to join MUFON, and so I was with them for till 2011, and then something happened at the Mutual UFO Network. Some brouhaha. We don't know if their files were stolen or copied, and somebody just ran off with them. Especially, aerospace mogul Robert Bigelow was a chairperson as well of MUFON, or a member of MUFON, and his grandparents having had a UFO sighting, he definitely knew there was something to it, and he recently admitted within the last 2 years during an interview that the alien presence is real, and he knows it. But since then, MUFON has been kind of up in the air about a lot of things, and not really using the material that they have to educate the public as much as I thought they would. For instance, my own report of daytime UFO, which I actually filmed on VHS for a few seconds, was in one of the members of MUFON Ontario's closet for 3 years. It wasn't being used to educate, and it took me almost 4 years before I got back the original that I sent in. So I said to myself, well, if MUFON won't even advertise their 70,000 plus case files that they have, I mean, sure, they had a TV show called Hangar One that ran for about 6 to 8 episodes, but maybe 2 seasons too, but it just stopped. And yet that sure as heck didn't cover the 70,000 plus case files. And we're talking about really cool cases that would convince the hardest skeptic that there's something going on, and has gone on. So
I'm quite sure you, before you made your decision to leave, you being the smart guy you are, you must have asked some questions to the powers to be. What is this kind of behavior?
I kind of suspected, I don't know, sometimes I feel that a lot of people are afraid to go out on a limb and use the material because they feel like they still need to be reassured somehow by somebody else.
Okay.
But having had, but a lot of people that are in UFO research probably have never had a sighting. So it's kind of weird. I mean, I've been accused about this when I was talking to pot smokers, for instance, as well. You don't know what it's like because you don't smoke pot. I said, well, I know, but or any other drug, what kind of effect it would have, and how dangerous it is to the body. I mean, maybe not pot, but everything else is. This pot, I believe now that my mindset has been changed on a lot of things, including pot, where now I realize it's a medicinal plant. It's not a drug, because the real drugs will kill you. Pot won't.
Yeah.
So, and they won't make you see things. A lot of times when I would relay some of the sightings made by Don Campbell in the late 60s, oh yeah, he must have been on something. No, he couldn't have been on something. He was a tradesperson, a master welder, and plus, I talked to a lot of pot users and smokers, and you don't hallucinate under the influence of pot, no matter how much you try. So it could be PCP, crack cocaine, but that stuff, if you're welding, you need to make sure your weld is solid, and you can't be on drugs when you're doing that kind of stuff. So that was one thing. But yeah, I believe that a lot of researchers have never had a sighting, and it's kind of funny. You're studying something that you have never seen yourself. Like Stan Friedman has never had a single sighting, and he was the nuclear physicist who actually believed wholeheartedly that the stuff was real, because he saw the evidence in a lot of cases, talked to a lot of witnesses, and basically broke open the Roswell case.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that happened with MUFON. Another thing that happened to me that was kind of surprising later after MUFON, in 1998, I got a call from the Camilla Scott Show down in Toronto. And the funny thing is, I never submitted my name to be on a talk show, and this was the very first time. Actually, before that, I was on a local TV show called MCTV Today. It ran for about a half an hour, and it was in the morning. And I've been on about 3 times. But I felt kind of weird, because the first time I was on there, I had nothing except one MUFON shirt on me, and I had nothing to back myself up. And I felt like I was getting questions left and right. So the next time I was there, I had bought a few books, including one that talked about animal mutilation, that showed crop circle photographs, and then they seemed to perk up. The people that was interviewing me, they seemed to perk up. I saw a change in their reaction. And eventually the skepticism basically went away. So I did 3 presentations, I was interviewed 3 times on this local show. And then when I found out about the Camilla Scott Show, I said, well, that's funny, because I never submitted my name to them. Turns out it was a friend of mine who was a skeptic. He was a skeptic. He's a guy that I met that thought I was crazy, because once on the show I mentioned that there was a base on the far side of the moon and it wasn't ours. And so he thought I was whack. Well, eventually he had a sighting of his own, and he's the one who submitted my name to Camilla Scott Show without me knowing.
Isn't that funny?
So I received a bus ticket and a whole bunch of stuff. When I got there, I got a $50 gratuity, so you don't get paid a whole lot when you appear on the show. And that's where I got to meet in person some of the MUFON Ontario members, including my late web host, who basically had helped me later on, around 2006, 2007, with the website program, so I can develop my website. And so that's how I met from MUFON Ontario, and that's why I, in person, after having done the work with them in conjunction with MUFON Canada and MUFON also based in the States.
Now, who took over your post where you, when you retired or left the post? Who became the, let's say, supervising director of the Ontario region?
Nobody really took over. After a while, the group basically disbanded. I don't know if there's anybody else around doing anything. So I knew there was Ivan Sherlock, who was stationed or based. He lived in Thunder Bay. There was a lady named Dorothy that actually was down in Sarnia. But nobody else in between except me. I mean, I was like, I had a huge territory to cover, and I said, there's no way that I could cover all this, whether we have a sighting or a landing case in New Liskeard. I had one case in New Liskeard that came in where a little kid had removed a so-called alleged implant out of his leg. And to make a long story short, it turned out to be a lead shot that came out. It must have ricocheted off a tree and ended up in his leg. But he had said this. He had written me a letter. He was 11 years old at the time, and said that he took a little knife, a little hot knife, and he had popped this thing out because he could feel this bump underneath his skin. And it just happened that my biology teacher out of Amherst High School, his brother worked for the DOD, the Department of Defense, in Ottawa, and could analyze criminalize the implant, the so-called implant. So I sent the sample to him, and I received it. I don't know how many months later I got it back, but could have been just a couple of months. And I received a spectrograph of the indication of what elements were inside, and the highest indication, the highest peak, was actually lead. And they even took electron microscope photographs, I guess, or very powerful photographs of like zoomed-in photos of the little ball, and sure enough, it's a lead shot. So maybe the little kid didn't remember how it got in his flag or whatever. There's no entry wound as far as he was concerned, but I had it tested and it came out negative. But then again, I believe that some of the elements. Some of the implants are actually made to vibe or proliferate or mesh with the human body, but they will have more unusual components than what this thing had. So that was an easy debunking or explanation right there. But still pretty neat that through my high school teacher I could have gotten something tested at the DOD, and I still have the little pill bottle. It says Department of Defense and the analysis lab, and that was pretty cool. But other than that, that's basically what happened. The group disbanded, and I became an independent, and I think a lot more things have happened and come my way since I left MUFON. And any reports I get, I don't really share with them because they don't do anything with it. I will tabulate them on my website, and if and when I do a PowerPoint presentation, if somebody asks, I will have a list of all the local incidences that have taken place. I'm not a hoarder of information. I do hoard the information, but I share it. MUFON hoards the information but doesn't share it.
Yes.
So,
What is your opinion on being an independent, as you said, and then to say working with national club representation with MUFON? I'm going to coin President Trump, who developed the word fake news. How much fake news is in the UFO industry, in the culture?
Well, there's a lot of things going on that I don't put too much credence in. For instance, the secret space program, and you've got some people all of a sudden claiming that they've worked on Mars for the last 40 years and they've been indoctrinated in some program since stage 9 or whatever. I was really listening to a show on Netflix called Our Strange Rock, or This Strange Rock, hosted by Will Smith. And it includes 8 astronauts, including Chris Hadfield, who has spent altogether 1,000 hours in orbit aboard the Mir space station and in the International Space Station.
Right.
And Chris Hadfield said that with all the time that he spent in space, when he came back, he lost 10% of his bone density. And he said that's a problem they haven't figured out. They can't. The human body is not meant to be somewhere where there's no real gravity. And artificial gravity won't work for a long time. I don't care how. I think it was. I don't know if it was a space lab, but there's one laboratory where it would rotate, and you see an old film where 2 guys are running around the wall of this round structure. But eventually, the one guy trips and he just curls up like in fetal position, and the other guy comes up behind him, and next thing you know, they're both together trying to run around the structure, but they're not really plastered to the sides. Now, if you want to build a bigger space station that rotates, the rotation is going to be even slower. So there's no way that people are going to be plastered to the wall, having artificial gravity, as they call it.
So how do you feel that 10% bone density loss? How do you feel that happened?
Oh, it's because you get, when you're in space, your body gets elongated. You're basically floating, and everything wants to float apart. But you're being held together by your skin. Now, when you come back on Earth, I mean, everything compresses back down because gravity all of a sudden freaking takes hold, And they've had one astronaut or cosmonaut from Russia, took him 2 months before he could recover his legs, the use of his legs. To me, that's a major problem. So anybody saying they've been in space for 40 years or whatever and have been to Mars, I think it's BS. I think it's BS. And the people would like to be like at the stage of Star Trek where we've got all this. The only person who really has a space fleet is Elon Musk.
Yes.
Yeah. He's like our Tony Stark. He's He's all this cool stuff. The Tesla car, the flamethrower. Now he's got rockets that land by themselves and the boosters that land by themselves. Yeah. Since when does NASA do that? NASA's never done that. So
why do you feel he's a leader in that field when NASA has been around for 1 million years with millions of dollars? How come an independent entrepreneur can do that?
Because NASA is old school. They don't seem to want to take too much risk or too much money. But when you have an individual who has his own money, he can pretty well do whatever he wants to do, and it's awesome because he puts no limitations on himself. But NASA is restricted by, first of all, NASA is 80% controlled by the military.
Yeah.
So anything that's in space that they can detect with their very powerful space radar or whatever they have, they know the UFOs are out there, even though they're denying to the public that there's anything to it. And they've been denying ever since the beginning. Now they're trying to backwash or backpedal on this entire Pentagon thing, that the ATIP program had nothing to do with UAPs or UFOs. So
back, Michel, to the comment, coin a phrase of President Trump, the fake news. Why would somebody be out there trying to fake the UFOs when there are these thousands of sightings you pointed out earlier in our conversation? Why does somebody want their 15 minutes of fame, not being an expert researcher, investigator like yourself, who has gone up through the ranks in the proper channels and ladders and met people and, made your own assumptions and decisions on stuff? Why is somebody out there trying to tamper with the fake news?
Well, back in the day, I think they were trying to ridicule their witnesses, whether it's an individual or the military, using trash can covers in some of their videos. But nowadays, it's people who have never even had a sighting themselves, and they're posting all these fake UFO videos on YouTube for making money. Because apparently, I have a YouTube channel, but I don't have anything on it. And people are making money the more videos you post, or the more personal videos you post. I've got a whole list of my favorite UFO documentaries that are listed on my YouTube channel, but I'm not anywhere near having as many followers as some of these other places where these people are putting up fake UFO videos. And you don't know how many times I've received the same video from my sister, who was asking me what I thought about it. And then somebody else would send me the same video like a year and a half later. And I knew right away CGI, because nobody gets that good of a shot of a UFO, a landed UFO with the occupants walking around it, and then the thing taking off at lightning speed vertically after, when the aliens are pretty far in the distance and it's all hazy. You can see the little blur around them. Now, perhaps they'll be really good and get better at making CGI where you can't tell the blurriness around the items that have been superimposed in the actual background. But I know for a fact in my heart of hearts that those people have never had a UFO sighting. Because you look at those objects that they have on YouTube, they look like something out of District 9, something that was made for TV, science fiction film, or movie. So they've never seen a UFO. UFOs are plain Jane. After a while, it gets so boring. It's just like Ted Phillips would say about the landing sites. They're so common, or they're so similar. After a while, it just gets boring, But it's still interesting because something unusual happened there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, folks, you're listening to our show segment, Close Encounters with the BMD, and we have resident expert research investigator from the northern country, stationed in the Sudbury area, Michel Deschamps, who has been investigating UFOs for decades. And we're so happy to have him on the show here on CHHA 1610 AM everywhere. Michel, I want to expand on this fake ID, fake news, CGI. That seems expensive. Would somebody in your level of expertise, would they go out spending a lot of money to try and fake society?
I don't think it would cost that much. I guess if you get your hands on programs that can actually morph things, like one particular crop circle case, for instance, that's what they thought people had used. It was a morphing program where you could actually create a crop circle pattern appear on film, or and you take the film. Well, the funny thing is, it turns out that the actual pattern was real, because when they went out in the field, they saw the snowflake pattern that appeared in this particular area in England, and on the video, the crop circle is laid down in seconds. And that was one thing that I totally knew at the beginning. It's like these things are created overnight, and they must be done fairly fast. And so when they started talking about it, people doing it, whatever, I said there's no way that a bunch of people could be doing it and not leaving any trace of damage to the plant or whatever. And when I saw the video where the pattern is created in seconds, I said, oh, this is something totally out of the ordinary, and it's not people doing it. Why people fake stuff now? I think it's useless, because there's too much information out now, reliable information on UFOs, whether you talk to me or you talk to John Greenwald of the blackvault.com out in California, or, there's a few other people. I mean, George Knapp. George Knapp is a good investigative reporter who basically broke the story about Area 51 and Area S4 with Bob Lazar. But
right.
Once you're able to separate the chaff from the wheat, what you're left with is still a lot. I mean, J. Allen Hynek of the Center for UFO Studies once said that we have an embarrassment of riches. And then when somebody said, well, where's the evidence? He says, where would you like to have the trucks back up to? They have loads. We have loads of evidence. Maybe the UFO groups have all had it, sequestered somewhere. But if you were to pile it up together and fill a few trucks, maybe that would convince a lot of people to say, holy boy, there's something going on for sure, and it's not the military doing it. The military, if they had that kind of technology, they'd be using it, and they would have been spotted by the enemy at some point.
Yes. Now, do you yourself, Michel, believe in fake news on these people trying to get their 15 minutes of fame?
Yeah. I believe that people are either trying to just get their 15 minutes of fame, but a lot of times the real witnesses, it's the farthest thing from their mind. They don't even want to report. That's why we believe that only 10% of the sightings actually get reported. So there's probably 90% that go unreported because people have seen the ridicule factor is still there, and then maybe not as bad as it used to be back in the day, like 20, 15 years ago. And I've seen a change. I mean, you look at Carlson Tucker, or Tucker Carlson, I guess, from CNN, and he's completely turned around. He was making fun of the reports before, and now he's asking serious questions. Now that's what's going to be taking place eventually. Is a lot of people are going to have that same reaction to the evidence and to the facts. Maybe I'll take more military sightings, but then eventually they'll have to turn away from the military sightings and say, okay, these are credentialed people that have seen stuff and they've got the equipment, but there's also a lot of civilian sightings that are made by reliable people that are not lying to themselves, and they're not lying to their family members, and they're not lying to the media. And I bet you 100 to 1 or 200 to 1 that civilian sightings still outnumber the military sightings quite a lot. So once they're done, swallowing all of this, there that the military's had all these sightings and verifiable stuff due to radar and whatever instrumentation, then they'll eventually turn back and say, well, you know what? Maybe we should take a second look at all the civilian accounts, and then they'll be like blown away. They'll be blown away.
So how do you yourself? How do you investigate the fake news when, say, let's pretend, hypothetically make up a scenario, somebody sends you some data, some tape, a clip, voiceover or something? How do you go into it thinking about, well, I got to check and see that there's no fake news? Like, what do you do? Break it down for the listeners, what you do to make sure you're watching or investigating something that is real versus the fake news.
Yeah. Well, I've had a couple of cases where people took photos. One photo was taken at night. This man was dropping off his daughter at a local mall at a town nearby, and he photographed what he thought was a triangular object in the sky. And he sends me the photos, and after a while, I was looking at the photo very carefully, and I asked him, "Did you step outside your car and take the photo?" He says, "No." He says, "I took the photo through the windshield." I said, "Oh." So I went back to the photos, and I looked at the photos, and the lights that were in the sky, sadly, were an exact reflection of the lights on the actual structures, like the buildings, like marquees, different light patterns exactly matched. So, and I wanted him to see that's what I discovered. So what I did is I basically used Paint Shop Pro. I actually uploaded the photo, and I used a red pen-like thing on instrument on the Paint Shop program, and I actually circled the lights in the sky, and I circled the lights on the buildings at the shopping mall, and I linked all of them. And he was disappointed that it was not a UFO picture, but he says, "You know what? At least you're a pretty good investigator, and you've got a good eye for noticing that it was, reflection or a deflection in that case, because photographing through your windshield, you're going to get a double image. You're going to have the ground image of the real structures, and you'll have an effect where it's projected upward to your camera, but also through the windshield." And so I tell people, if you want to photograph something that's in the sky or on the ground, step outside your car, because you're going to get an effect coming back to you due to the photographing through your window. So that was one thing. Another time with a magazine that I got was one of those UFO sightings tabloid magazines, and there was a photo in there of a particular landing case down in Florida. The guy had a photograph of the object in the sky, and then some white powdery substance on the forest floor.
Okay.
And I looked at the object, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "That looks like the toy escape pod from one of the toys I had in my collection called Land of the Jawas." And I said, "Look, you see the four thrusters and the shape of the object." And so I went downstairs. At the time I had my collection, I sold it all. But I went and got the toy out, and I looked at it, and I said, "Holy, it's the same object." So we went out, and we actually faked the same pictures, similar, a friend of mine, just to show that that's exactly what the object was. And what I'm assuming was the white powdery substance on the ground floor is probably Tide or Spick and Span or something. And so this guy had submitted these photos, and the magazine never back-checked, never did a back-check or whatever. And how could they know? I mean, not everybody collected Star Wars toys. And I just happened to have the same escape pod that they used as a model to just dangle with fish line, I'm assuming, up in the air between the trees. And, so I debunked that one.
Wow. So you've got a real key eye for investigation to... now, do you feel these people were trying you on, or you just had to enlighten them that, hold on here, we might not have what we have.
Yeah, I think it's the latter. The thing is, it almost works the same at work, because I work at Walmart, and we stock the floor on occasion. Well, I stock the floor on occasion, mostly stuck in the back in receiving. Keep an eye out for other trucks coming in. But when I stock on the floor, a lot of times where we stock, the stuff that's there is people have been clicking with other items that don't belong there. So it's like a domino effect. So I take that item out, I put in the proper item, and I go somewhere else. And next thing you know, wherever I go, I find stolen items.
Oh, you're kidding.
I can see something underneath the shelving units. I find it's almost like they jump out at me. I says, you know what? I'm in the wrong field. I should be a detective.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I've got a good eyesight for this kind of stuff. And attention to detail has always been, even when I did my drawings or when I made the model as the Inco complex, attention to detail, although it's an abstract model, you'll wait. I'll send you pictures of the Inco model. I don't even know if it's posted on the website per se, but I'm also planning to make a model of our radar base that we used to have. And people say, "Oh my God, you got such attention to detail." So, well, I became a trained observer. People say a trained observer can only be a pilot or a police officer, yada yada yada. I said, no. I said, if you know how much you're passionate about something and you don't want to be found out to have something fake, because I will occasionally run to the local media and say, I've got this case, I've got that case, and I'll give you an exclusive. The last thing you want is something fake within your information, so that then your name will become mud with the local media.
Mm-hmm.
And so I make pretty sure that what I have is factual. Now, the same thing can be said about the alien autopsy. I believed in the alien autopsy when it first came out, because a six-fingered alien was not exactly what I expected. I thought it was going to be the Roswell one, as they pushed it as the Roswell being, but everybody at that time knew that the Roswell being had 4 fingers, with one finger acting as an opposable thumb.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 digits. Why would you put 6? That to me is overkill. Now, whether it was somebody trying to, like you say, create fake news, but that was too much. That was way too much. Even putting in the pads, the controlling pads, that supposedly were removable from the ship. Again, with 6 indentations for the 6 digits, with 6 fingers. Mm-hmm. That's overkill. So I left that thing up on the fence. I'm not saying it's totally debunked, but people can become a turncoat to a turncoat. They can say, this was a real story, then later on they'll say, oh, we faked it, but then somebody might have forced them to say, we faked it. Mm-hmm. But it's real all along. It's just the message might be real, but the messenger might be shady.
Gotcha.
So
tell us your thoughts on how you feel when you have to burst the bubble for Mr. New Image on, hey, look what I've discovered. I've discovered an alien photo, saw this and that. What's the reaction when you have to tell them, well, I don't want to burst your bubble too bad, but this is not what you told me it was?
Well, some people, they get adamant, they get defensive. But
right.
The one guy with the photos at the mall there, he was okay with it. He said, you know what, that's pretty good, because a lot of people would accuse me of saying, oh, you see a picture or you see an object in the sky for a few seconds and you call it a UFO. And I said, no, I'm not like that. God forbid I see something in winter, because I don't know if I want to go outside and freeze my butt for an hour and a half looking at an object slowly moving across the sky. But I won't just readily say, oh, it's the UFO right off the bat. Wait, case closed. It's a real case. No, I will look at the picture. I will look at the video. I've seen people taking pictures where they have the sun in plain sight in the photo, and that's not always a good idea, because you'll get these artifacts that are produced by different cell phones. Some artifacts, like when you have the one thing I discovered using pictures that where people had photographed the sun, and then you see this little green orb or a white orb or whatever, and it doesn't look like a lens flare, like a typical lens flare, because you've got the sun in the actual photo. But then when you take measurements, like let's say the sun is in the upper left corner of the photo, and your orb is in the lower right corner of your photo. You take measurements from the edge of the photo to the object, both horizontally and vertically. And then when you stand back and you look at the photo, both the sun and the artifact are exactly equal distance to the edge of the photos on all four sides.
Gotcha.
And so that was something surprising that people said, "Holy crap, really?" And I said, "Yeah." And then another thing too, if you really want to take good pictures of orbs or rods or whatever they were called, you can actually use solar obliteration, which is a good technique. Basically, on a nice sunny day, you can actually stand outside, and when you aim your camera at the sky, you make sure the sun is blocked out by the edge of your roof. And people would be surprised at how many white objects they'll see way up there. Now, sometimes it could be dust particles, pollen, maybe, but people have photographed UFOs that way. Tim Edwards of, I think it was Salida, Arizona, actually photographed a cylindrical object that way, where he just basically obliterated the sun by using the roof of his house. So the sun is not at all reflecting into the camera. And you can see these white objects. Well, this particular object was cylindrical, so that was definitely a wow, a moment. But there's different techniques that you can use to actually get some good footage. And if these objects are around all the time, you're more likely to capture something that way than to, Now, if you want to photograph a sunset, well, that's different. You're bound to have some lens flare effect or these little artifacts that sometimes look like a little green sphere. In some phones, the green sphere will have little tiny white specks on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's the sensor on board the phone that will create that artifact. Another artifact that you can get is when you have an old style camcorder with VHS. As you close the aperture or whatever, people will try to zoom in on the light source, whether it's at dusk or in the middle of the night. And the thing is, they think they're zooming in and they see a diamond shape all of a sudden, or what I call the Batman emblem, and they'll think it's the actual shape of the ship. It's not. It's because the light source is so powerful, it will distort and give you a false image. You'll never get to see the object behind the light source.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to get different artifacts as you open or close the aperture. So it's taking night shots. I'm really bad at taking night shots. Anyways, I would hope to see it. I've had more sightings, thank God, of UFOs in the daytime than I had the nighttime. But I never had really good photographic equipment. I've never had a 35 millimeter, with all the zoom lenses and stuff. I usually just get these portable ones and have automatic lenses come out and try to get the picture as clear as you can. And
well, sir, we are out of time. Thoroughly enjoyed this session, and you are not only a breath of fresh air, but certainly a wealth of knowledge. Looking forward to our chat next week. Folks, you've been listening to Close Encounters with me, the BMD, and our honored guest, our show segment, Michel Deschamps. He is top of his field, in my opinion, in research and investigation on UFO. He hails up in the North Country of Ontario in the Sudbury area. Michel, thank you for the time, and looking forward to catching up next week. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and I've got to get at my education background and get some questions I can try and stump you with.
Sure.
All right. Well, have a great week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
You take care, BMD.
Bye now.
Bye now.